I'm Effie, this is What Effie Reads, and today I am going to be raiding my childhood bookcases. So for the last week or so, I have been staying at my childhood home. It's just like routine visit, you know, visiting family as you do. And I very much grew up in a family of readers. Like, both my parents are readers. Still to this day, they still get through a lot of books. Honestly, wouldn't be surprised if my dad reads more books than me in a year. But yes, many books in this house. So I have been having a rummage through the bookshelves to try and find like books from my childhood, and honestly it's been a bit of a walk down memory lane. So what I thought was that today I would do a kind of cozy, chatty video where I just go through some of the notable books that I pulled off my shelves, and also just generally talk about the kind of books that I was reading when I was a kid. I think some of them I may have not read, but like I remember picking up. And also, I will say up front that even for the books that I've read, there are a number of them that I couldn't tell you anything about. But I think I'm just going to go in no particular order. I'm going to kind of pull up books, just chat basically. I hope you enjoy this. Please leave a comment down below some of the books that you remember reading from your childhood or you remember picking up. Yeah, let's just crack on. So the first one that I have distinct memories of kind of enjoying and from my childhood, but I don't remember very much of it. And I feel like this is something that fits thematically with a lot of my childhood reading, and that is Odysseus, the greatest hero of them all. And this is the story as told by Tony Robinson, which, if you are familiar with British culture, wow, I said that in a really British way. He is from Blackadder, he's also from Time Team, I'm sure he's also from some other things, but that's, I think, what I know him most notably for. But because I grew up reading this, it's only a little book, but because I grew up reading it, for me, he's also very much associated with this book. The reason that I say that this is kind of fits a lot with my reading as a child was that I read a lot of classics. I'm not going to sit here and say that I read full editions of the classics, but my parents had the audiobook on CDs at the time of a lot of classics, and they were abridged versions. So there are a significant number of classics that, whilst I probably couldn't remember anything to tell you anything about them, I have technically read. Like, one of my favourites is Tess, but also we've got Jane Eyre, and I think the edition's up there. I don't know why I didn't take it off the bookcase. But Jane Eyre's a strange one because it opens with Jane reading on a windowsill behind a curtain in the library. And I remember doing that as a kid. One of my homes, the bedroom and the home, had a really deep windowsill. So I used to love sitting on that windowsill, especially on a rainy day, and just watching the world go by whilst, funny enough, I was reading Jane Eyre. And then in addition to that, and honestly, I couldn't tell you which ones I have and haven't read, but I have this collection of children's classics. And I don't think this is even all of the children's classics I have, because I think I saw White Fang earlier. But we have Pinocchio, The 39 Steps, which I saw this play in London for my 21st birthday, and I didn't realise I already owned a copy. Huckleberry Finn, this feels quite thin. I don't know if these are abridged versions actually. Aladdin and Other Stories, The Call of the Wild, Grimm's Fairy Tales. I mean, this one feels well loved. So I think I probably read this one. The Children of the New Forest. Anne of Green Gables. I'm pretty sure I read this one. The Treasure Seekers. Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Tom Brown's School Days. Oh, I'm running out of hand space now. The Wizard of Oz. This one feels pretty well loved, but I'm pretty sure I haven't read The Wizard of Oz. The Happy Prince and Other Stories. What Katie Did Next. I think I read these, but I've got no recollection of the Katie stories. The Prince and the Pauper. One of my favourite tropes / stories of all time. I love the Prince and the Pauper kind of thing. Rip Van Winkle. And then we've got 2 Sherlock Holmes books. So we've got Sherlock Holmes Investigates. And we have The Hound of the Baskervilles. I think there is, I don't know where they are, but I'm pretty sure the Little Women books were also in this collection, because a long time ago I have read all 4 Little Women books. They haven't left particularly a massive impression on me, but I'm pretty sure I have read them. And in terms of other classics, now this is where it gets a bit difficult, because obviously classic doesn't really have a fixed definition. But the books that I've kind of put aside as like pretty easily acknowledged as classics, whether people agree they should be or not, we've got Black Beauty, and you can see my edition is very well loved, but I also just absolutely love this. And honestly, I just love books that have a story to tell, and the fact that this is so well loved tells a lot of story. I'm pretty sure I got this from a secondhand bookshop in Sunderland, where I was born, and yeah, it's lasted all this time. It is actually one of my all-time favourite books. I've read it a couple of times. I think I've physically read this edition a couple of times, and there's something about Black Beauty that I really enjoy. So knowing that my original copy is still here, looking tatty as it is, but it's still here, fills me with so much happiness. So this book, I'm pretty sure this is actually technically my parents' copy, and I've never read it myself, but it's one that I really want to read. And honestly, I think this says something about the way that publishing in the UK used to be, because look at the pure beauty of that flop level. And this is Watership Down. Is this a bit of a theme? I feel like this is a bit of a theme, because this, I believe, is also from the perspective of the animals. But maybe I will have to put this on my TBR for next year, because honestly it is one of these that I grew up, like, this pretty much lived on my shelves as I was growing up, and somehow I never got around to reading it. And going from kind of one extreme to another, we've got A Clockwork Orange. This definitely is not my edition, because I think I may have shown it on my channel before, but I have an edition at home that I bought relatively recently, but I have a preferred edition of A Clockwork Orange, and it's the one with the glass of milk on. I will pop a photo on screen. But I remember reading this as a teenager, I think, and being pretty much a willful teenager, I remember turning around to my dad and saying, well, I've read the book now, so I guess I'm allowed to watch the film. And like, rightfully so, he wasn't letting me watch the film, because it is a heavy film with some very adult themes. But at the end of the day, I had read the book, and that was my justification. But I remember really enjoying this. Like, it's a little tough, but the edition I like has a lot of backstory about the writing of the book and the cultural impact, and it also has some discussion about the language that is created in it. I just really, really enjoy it. Oh wow, I think I'd forgotten that the protagonist, Alexander Delage, is only 15, which kind of makes it more terrifying. And it sort of makes me think of that My Chemical Romance song, you know, the one that's like, teenagers scared oh, I can't sing. I'm so sorry, but you know the one. Of course, we've got some really kind of classic books that kids have. I have Goosebumps. I think this is probably my whole Goosebumps collection, which is pretty pitiful. But the thing that takes me back to my childhood is this one. I don't know if this is something that like only one book did at the time, but I don't know if you can see, it says Weird Whaler inside, and it's got some tape in place. So I wonder if I remove the tape, if it would still work. Probably not. But I remember when I first bought it, and I think I got it at like a Scholastic fair, and the school just going, well, the classroom or the teachers getting really frustrated because this book screamed. It's so weird. He's got like a full setup inside. It still works! After all this time. I think I was either in year 3 or year 6. That's amazing! Oh my gosh, I love that! I can't believe it still works though. Or worked. Oh no! What have I done? Oh no! It won't stop! Right, I'm going to pause the video and try and sort this out. I fixed it. Oh gosh, I can't believe I almost had a book screaming for the rest of it. But yes, no wonder that was not something the teachers were a fan of. I recently read a Goosebumps graphic novel and was wholly unimpressed. So I think I might pick up a couple of Goosebumps at some point in the new year just to see what it's like. But honestly, such a slice of childhood. And for a bit more of childhood nostalgia, I think I read the majority of these books from the library, which is why I don't have many of them. But we have Horrible Histories, which are, I don't know if they're particularly international, but certainly in the UK, they're just such a part of growing up. And the fact that you got so much more history from Horrible Histories than you ever learn in school. Like, these picked us up where the school system let us down. And other random bits of nostalgia were the skinny little books you'd get. Like, I can't believe that I used to read such tiny books, which is probably why I could also read really chunky books that would intimidate me now. Oh, let's fix my hood. Loving the cozy vibes. So we have Rent a Genius by Gillian Cross. We have Paddy's Pot of Gold by Dick King-Smith. The Roman Bean Feast by Gillian Cross. And How to Handle Your Dad by Roy Apps. And there was something really appealing and irreverent about these kind of books, especially like How to Handle Your Dad, which was written kind of like almost like a mechanic's manual. Like things like we've got overheating and oh, this one's dog-eared. Wet plugs. But I have very fond memories of these three in particular. I think because they were so silly. Like we've got, it's a Roman invasion. Davy's class is doing a project on the Romans. The best piece of work will get a prize at the Roman feast on the last day of term. And Davy is determined to win. But so is Molly, and she'll go to any lengths to beat him. David has to make something really special. But what? It doesn't tell you very much about it, but I'm pretty sure it had like an actual Roman in. Rent a Genius. Sophie isn't going to waste any more advice on her ungrateful family. There must be some people out there who really need a genius to help them. For only 50 pence, Sophie will tackle any problem, from bossy grandmothers to disappearing tomatoes. The only trouble is, everyone needs helping at once. And then Paddy's Pot of Gold, I don't remember too much, but again, I have like fond feelings about, if you know what I mean. So, oh gosh, sorry, my hair is annoying me. So it says, when Bridget sees a carrot moving about in the garden, she can't believe her eyes. When the carrot turns out to be a tiny leprechaun, she can't believe her luck. A real live leprechaun, and Bridget's the only human who can see and hear him. But what about his pot of gold? If every leprechaun has one, where's Paddy's? So yeah, these are like just chunks of my childhood, really. The next absolutely massive section we've got are plays. I didn't even realise that I own so many plays, but I guess it makes sense because I took drama and theatre studies at A level. So 4 of these were books that were plays that I had to study for A level. So I'm going to pull them out. So these 4 were the plays that I had to study at A level. And then the majority of these were just ones that I seemed to acquire. I do remember at one point my secondary school was having a massive clear out of like the annex or attic or whatever. And they basically said, fill your boots with the books because we're just going to throw them away. So there are a number of these that have a stamp for my old schooling because they were just kind of giving them away. But the 4 plays out of those that I guess I know best, although annoyingly I think we had to have like clean copies or copies at school, so I'm not sure where my copies with my notes on the plays are, or at least for some of these. So we've got Racine's Phaedra, which I think this one might have my notes. Oh no, that doesn't look like my handwriting. Yeah, so we've got Racine's Phaedra, which I don't remember too much about. We've got Timberlake, Wharton Baker, Our Country's Good, which again does not have my notes in, but very poignant. The whole thing is there's a line that says, we left our country for our country's good. And then we've got Lorca, and this is Blood Wedding and Donna Rosita the Spinster and Yerma. I think that's 3. So the 3 plays in it. Yeah, and Yerma's the 3rd one. And I believe Yerma was the one that we studied, and I remember it being to do with, well, I would say a barren woman, but I'm pretty sure the woman wasn't the one who was barren. Very, very fond memories of this play and learning a lot about Andalusia at the time as well. And then the final one was Antigone, and I think this actually has my notes in. Yes, this is actually the edition with my notes in, although it only has it for the first, oh gosh, sorry, the lighting, because I don't have my softboxes with me, but you can see that it has some notes about staging and whatnot. So these are quite a blast from the past for me, and all pretty good plays if I remember correctly. I especially, weirdly, Yerma was the one that I've been struggling to remember. I studied for a while, but as soon as I saw it, it all came back to me. And I think, honestly, I think Phaedra is the only one that didn't really leave an impression on me. Antigone is by far one of my favourite Greek tragedies. Our Country's Good, I remember it just being so poignant. And then Yerma was heartbreaking, but also really well done. The next couple of books I'm not going to talk too much about, but they're kind of what started my love for old books with slightly different bindings. So these are Teach Yourself books, Trigonometry and Algebra, and I'm not sure if I've looked at them like since I understood more maths, but I remember as like quite a young kid trying to understand them and them just making absolutely no sense to me. They are quite complex, but actually having a flick through, they kind of make sense to me. There's a few things about logarithms and whatnot that aren't quite as clear to me, but surprisingly, the vast majority of it I actually can understand, which I didn't realise. And trigonometry, yeah, much the same. I can actually understand it. That's a weird feeling, remembering something being way beyond your understanding as a kid and then looking back and going, yeah, this makes sense to me. That's so weird. Another slightly weird one, but I have such fond memories of this. Like, it's such a simple, basic book, but I remember being absolutely obsessed with this little thesaurus, looking for alternative ways of saying things, looking up like fancy words I could use instead of more well understood words. It's just such a strange thing to look back at Thesaurus and have the most fond nostalgic memories around. I've got a few more series that I'm going to talk about, and then we'll get into sort of random books. I know this is sort of a weird all over the place video, but I just thought it'd be really fun to go through and see the books that kind of shaped my childhood, I guess. So next up, I don't know what the name of the series is. I've always kind of thought of it as the Pure Dead series, but we've got these, and I'm not sure if it's clear on camera, but they've all got velour covers, which I'll be honest, I think is what originally made me pick them up. I'm pretty sure the first book is Pure Dead Magic. And it's got a dramatis personae. I do remember there being beasts in it, and I think there was a castle. But beyond that, there is a blurb in the front because the back is just like that. So it says, beasts in the basement, a gangster in a rabbit suit, and rats in the modem. Well, that just dates this book completely, that they've got a modem. Great-great-grandma in the freezer, a talking spider in the attic, and a crocodile in the moat. Titus is in his bedroom, Baby Damp in her nappy, and Pandora in a strop. Add a stressed-out witch for a mum, a kidnapped dad, and a nanny who puts Mary Poppins to shame, and you'll conjure up family life at Streger Schloss. It's bizarre. I mean, that sounds like so much fun. I can't remember how far I got into the series, but I have a feeling I read the first 2 books. Like, I'm pretty sure I never got onto Deep Trouble, and I think there are more books in the series. But again, this is one that I'd love to revisit because I do have fond memories of a kind of irreverence and a humour to them that I think I could really enjoy. Well, enjoy revisiting rather. Another series of books that I quite enjoyed as a kid, I think one of these I haven't read, and I have got one of these in my library at home, but they are again, I don't know the actual series title, but I've always referred to them as the My Story series, and they are fictionalized diaries from significant events in history. I'm pretty sure the Titanic one was the first one that I read, and then I read The Hunger, which is the one that's in my library at home, and then I think I read The Blitz. So I'm pretty sure I didn't read Crystal Palace, but I remember them being quite heartbreaking, but also a great way to introduce a child to historical events through a way that they could very easily relate. And I definitely am wanting to reread these. I'm also pretty sure that this series is much more expansive than the 4 books that I own. I do occasionally see books from this series in charity shops. It's kind of one of those series that just kind of pops up. But I have, again, really fond memories of them. And I've been meaning to reread The Hunger for a while. And I probably will also pick up the Titanic one, and I might as well pick up the other two whilst I'm at it. The final series that I've got, well, that I've come across whilst I was going through my shelves, that is intended for kids, because I've also got some series that aren't so kiddish, but I moved on to reading more adult series as a kid. So the final series I've got is Noughts and Crosses. I cannot find my copy of Noughts and Crosses, which makes me quite sad, but I have Knife Edge and Checkmate. I never owned the other three in this series. I know that the final one didn't come out till quite recently, but yeah, I'm so happy to have found Knife Edge and Checkmate, even though the only one I've actually read in the series is Noughts and Crosses, and I do need to continue it. But I am pretty chuffed that I have found this, because I feel like Noughts and Crosses might be a bit easier to track down, and I am looking forward to diving into the world, because Mallory Blackman has done an amazing job with this series, and the first book was so exceptional that I just can't wait to revisit, if I'm honest. There seems to be a bit of a trend of not being able to find first books in a series, because another series that I've got, and again, I think I only actually read the first book, but we've got the only book I could find in this series on the shelves actually was Spiral, but I'm pretty sure I also owned, well, I know I owned Ring because I read Ring, and I'm pretty sure I also owned Loop. So for those that don't know, the movie Ring was originally a book, and much like the original version of the movie is better than the Americanized version, the book is so good, so creepy, has a really good sense of horror, and I do remember thoroughly enjoying it. I have a weird feeling that it was one of those that was on the BBC Big Read, which they did, gosh, I think it was like 2005. It might have been even earlier. But then I did this thing where I decided I had to own all the books on the list because that would magically make me read them. And I think Ring might have been on the list. Or maybe it was just me being a young horror buff and I had to pick up Ring. I don't know, but it was good. I really hope at some point I can find my copy of Ring, because Spiral doesn't really do much on its own. Then another series I read, and I think it was only a duology, but we've got The Dice Man and The Search for the Dice Man. And I had so much fun with these books. The premise is fairly simple. It's basically a guy that gives over all the decisions in his life to the randomized rolls of dice, and it escalates and escalates so much and just becomes so absurd, but was so enjoyable to read. So yeah, super hyped to pick these up again. And as I say, I'm pretty sure it's a duology, so it's actually a series that I have completed, and the fact that it is only 2 books means that a reread should be fairly manageable. And then I feel like I would be remiss to not talk about the sci-fi classic that is The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. I have the slipcase edition, so in this beautiful little slipcase, and like these are the books in the series. They've all got very different covers, which kind of feels in fitting with the books really. It also used to really amuse me that they say a trilogy of 5, but that also fits with the humor of these books. I feel like this is a series that's pretty well known at this point, but essentially you've got this guy that his house is about to be demolished, and on the day that the crew come to try and demolish it and he's protesting, aliens come and tell Earth that Earth is to be demolished, so the Earth is then obliterated. But he is taken on a really wacky and eventful journey throughout space. We've got a cow that I think is a cow. My mind says it's a cow, but it probably isn't. We've got a cow in a restaurant that says, "Can I interest you in a part of my body?" We've got whales, we've got bowls of petunias, we've got the number 42. So just every bit as good as you expect it to be, really, and loved them as a kid. The final series that has just brought back all of the memories from my bookshelves is the True Blood series, which I believe is just called the Sookie Stackhouse series. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure I read all 13 of these books. In fact, no, I know I've read all 13 because the ending is very much a definitive ending. I don't like who Sookie ends up with in either the book or the TV show, but I remember just absolutely loving this series, being totally obsessed. And I can't remember, like, chronologically when I read it. I think I may have picked up this series, like, as the first season of the TV show was airing. But maybe I actually read it before. Oh no. In fact, I must have read it as the TV show was airing, because these are show tie-in covers. Annoyingly, I can't track down the last 3 books in this series. But as someone who was very obsessed with vampires, like so obsessed with vampires as a kid, like, I mean, the fact that I'm doing a reread of The Saga of Davenshan, which I promise I am still doing, I've just managed to fall significantly behind on. And that was my favourite book series growing up. But yeah, the fact that was my favourite book series, the fact that I was obsessed with this. What else? Oh, love Interview with a Vampire, but I haven't read any Anne Rice. And there's also Laszlo, the Count Dracula or something. It's on my bookshelves at home. But yes, all of the vampire books pretty much sums up one of my main interests as a child. Sorry, just had a wee realisation there. Anyway, very, very much enjoyed this book and the other 12 books in the series. And now I want to just kind of like random books, I suppose. What I will ask is, if you've made this far in the video, I'd be really interested to see which of the books I've mentioned in this video, bearing in mind that I've also mentioned that I am having trouble tracking down certain books in certain series. I would love to know which books you think I should reread or pick up in general, because there are a couple that maybe I haven't read ever. And I honestly would love to build a TBR out of books from my childhood, I guess. But let's get into the random, like, not part of series books that were on my shelves. The next book comes with a lot of conflicted feelings and no real answers, I suppose. Like, for me, it's something that holds a lot of nostalgia, and as someone who grew up in the 90s and early noughties, it was a part of life then, I suppose, and that is Buffy. And this book itself was a fun resource into a lot of the different monsters on the show. I'm not sure how far into the series it goes, but it has information on an awful lot of the series, and it's got a few full colour pictures, like who can forget the gentleman. but also Josh Whedon is trash. I forgot that was heavy. So, random books. I don't know if I've read this, but I thought this was really interesting when I was going through my shelves. It is a Jacqueline Wilson, but not as you would recognise a Jacqueline Wilson today. I am almost 100% sure it is the Jacqueline Wilson that I'm thinking of, but honestly, I've never heard of this book before, and I don't know anything about it. And also, I couldn't find it on Storygraph, so very odd one, but also it's so interesting to see, like, before Jacqueline Wilson kind of became such a household name. Or maybe I'm being stupid and it's a different Jacqueline Wilson, but I did Google it and it seems to be the same person. Then we have Pretties. I mean, this was such a compelling series. So apparently this series started in 2005, and then we had Ugly specials and extras, and I feel like it's probably very well known, but the concept was that when you got to a certain age, I want to say it was like 16, you underwent an operation to make yourself look like the beauty standards of society. And there was also a lot of dystopian elements to it. It's quite futuristic. I think probably one of the books that kicked off my love for dystopia. Oh, now I realise this isn't the first book in the series, but it still represents the Uglies series. And I do remember it being really enjoyable. It being the first book also means that this series started even earlier. But anyway, this is definitely a blast from my past as well. I feel like I've been saying that a lot. I hope this isn't boring. I just wanted a cozy chat about books, to be honest. One of the most evocative books that I've ever read has to be Perfume. It is a book so unlike anything else, except for maybe Stranger in a Strange Land. That gives me very similar vibes. But it is told from the perspective of a murderer as he seeks, I think it's specifically a woman, but I could be wrong, with a very specific fragrance. And he goes through such strange rituals to try and obtain that scent. It is unique on so many counts because it is so evocative of smell, and because it's from the perspective of the murderer. It's and it is also historical, but so good. I can't remember if it's got a evocative opening or not. Let's see. It says, in 18th century France, there lived a man who was one of the most gifted and abominable personages in an era that knew no lack of gifted and abominable personages. His story will be told here. His name was Jean-Baptiste Grenouille, and if his name, in contrast to the names of other gifted abominations, Dessards, for example, or Saint-Just, or Fouches, I apologise, by the way, that my French accent's awful, Bonaparte's, etc., has been forgotten today, it is certainly not because Grenouille fell short of those more famous blackguards when it came to arrogance, misanthropy, immorality, or more succinctly, wickedness, but because his gifts and his sole ambition were restricted to a domain that leaves no traces in history, to the fleeting realm of scent. Like, that just immediately, to like, it's difficult for me to be impartial because I know how much I love this book, but to me that draws you straight into the story and you immediately want to know everything about it, and it just feels so sweeping and intriguing just in that one paragraph. I feel like I've been talking for a really long time, and I'm getting to the point where a lot of these books I don't even know why I picked off the shelves, to be honest, because I don't remember too much about, but there are still a few that shine quite brightly for me. So we have a couple of scary story, ghost story books. This one, I have such vivid recollections, and considering how bad my memory is, that says a lot about the first story in this book, which is called Newell, and it is about a Newell post, which sounds really dull, but is really cool, and I just absolutely loved this collection of ghost stories. And then we've got this one that I don't remember anything about, but that's the Iron Giant on the front. And flicking through it, it was very strange. It was almost like the stories were on the tip of my brain, and I had this wave of just fondness for this book, which doesn't surprise me because honestly, going through my shelves today, I realised that I'm quite a fan of things that are slightly horror. Like, some of them are more of a gentle horror, I guess you could say, but I do like the things that go bump in the night. So these two kind of make sense as ones that I really enjoyed. This book, I could be wrong, but I have a feeling this had a horrendous kind of open-ending cliffhanger, but I also remember it being quite shocking and surprising. The blurb says it's 1840 and in the small village of Clifton, the children are dying from an outbreak of diphtheria. There's no medicine to save them, and unless help comes soon, a whole generation will be wiped out. Jessie's mother knows how to cure them, but it will mean revealing to Jessie the dark and dangerous secret which lies behind Clifton and all its people. Is Jessie ready to hear the truth? Will she risk her own life to save the lives of the people she loves? And is she prepared for the consequences of running out of time? The other thing that I remember from this book is I remember the twist. And again, that's not something that happens to me very much, but I can look at this and go, I know exactly what the twist was, and it was a corker. I picked up this book from the shelves. I don't even know if this is my copy or if it's my sister's. But this is kind of representative of an author that I'm not up to date with the whole back catalogue now, but as a teen, and I guess into my early 20s possibly, I read the whole back catalogue of Chuck Palahniuk's books, like even the short stories and the non-fiction, and I think it all started with Fight Club, honestly, which makes sense because it is Palahniuk's most famous book. If I'll be honest though, I think my favourite Palahniuk, and I say that and then can't remember the name of it, but there's a couple that involve, like, I think they're called like Doomed or something, but I also think the series, like, it feels like it's meant to be a trilogy, but there's only 2 books in it. It kind of deals with like afterlife and hell and Satan and that kind of thing, but in a very like humorous way. But honestly, I just have a real fondness for Palahniuk's writing, and the fact that I think I got up to the one that was about the presidential election, I think. That was the last one that I tried to read. So anything beyond that, I'm not up to date with. But yeah, just one of those random authors that you probably wouldn't necessarily associate with me, but big fan and have read an awful lot of his work. I mentioned earlier that I studied drama and theatre studies in school, and this was a book that I never actually read, but I had to pick up because it talks about Arto and his strange concepts for the theatre and just how very bizarre they were. And I could be completely off base, but my recollection of Artodian theatre was basically that it was impossible to stage. So something that I probably should pick up sooner rather than later because, well, no. I also think I had to import this book because the price is purely written in dollars on the reverse. I don't know if this is a book that I now have a duplicate copy of. I think if it isn't, this book is gonna come home with me. But it is Feed, which is a really interesting sort of science fiction dystopia type book where everyone has chips in their brain that enable them to access the internet. And then it talks about the way that you would kind of be excluded from society if you did not have the chip in your brain. And very, very well written, if I recall. Because that's the other thing. A lot of these books I haven't read for many, many years. But very well written and just wholly fascinating and a good time. We are down to the last few books. I am sure you'll be glad to hear. So these three are ex-library books, and this one I do not have very much recollection of, but I wouldn't be surprised if I loved it. Like when I picked it up off the shelves, it was a book where I couldn't tell you anything about it, but immediately my brain was like, I have fond feelings about this book. Whereas this one, I'm pretty sure I have read, but I'm not sure I would have fully understood what it was talking about as a kid because I don't think I fully understood or understood at all about striking. And this is a book where I'll show you the reverse actually so you can see the blurb. But I feel like this is definitely a book that I should give a try at rereading because I think it could be a book that I have a whole different understanding now that I'm an adult and do understand about striking and workers' rights and that kind of thing. And the third ex libris book I've got is The Witch and the Naughty Princesses. Oh, the amount of times I think I read this as a child, but I couldn't tell you anything about it other than it being fast paced and fun and just having that very childhood feel to it, like a fairy tale, but it's kind of thick for a fairy tale. But it also has pictures in it, I think. Yes, it has like really basic pictures in it, but still, it's just makes me so happy. And the final book that I'm going to talk about, because I have just been rambling for a lot, and I'm sure I've missed some big ones, but we've got Who Shot Queen Victoria. Like, I don't know if this is just completely fictionalized. I presume so, but it was so fun. Like, from the same author as Horrible Histories, it's about an assassination attempt against Queen Victoria. My guess is that it's going to take some look at truth and fiction, but play with the truth very fast and loose. That's what I'm going to guess. But that is your lot for today, I suppose. Please don't forget to let me know down below what kind of books you loved as a kid, what obscure titles you might have enjoyed, and also let me know which books you think I should be picking up from my childhood libraries. Like, what should I reread? Or, I mean, in the case of many of them, even if I've read already, just read in general because I don't remember a lot of these, but I do remember loving them. But I think that's it for now. So, love you. Bye.